Means I gotta make that statement that I can never remember where to find.
It's in the meeting chat if you need.
Oh, this meeting's chat?
Yes.
Okay, we're recording? All right, great. This meeting is now in session and is being held by electronic communications using Microsoft Teams due to the COVID-19 pandemic emergency.
All righty. So sort of with the agenda here. So we're going to go through the upcoming info and action on the policies. So as you know, your board is in the middle of the process for 4 policies. You've got staff electronics acceptable use, 2 goals policies from the Department of Teaching and Learning and General Instruction. Those 4 went for information on April 8th and going for action through consent on the 22nd. There is no information on the 22nd. The next policy going for information will be on May 6th, where we've got 3 policies from the Department of Instruction: resources, support resources in extended time, and selection of textbooks and other instructional materials. Those are going for information on May 6th and action on the 20th. And then finally, instructional delivery options, which was previously scheduled for going for information on April 22nd, has been shifted back and is now going May 20th and action on June 6th. So those are your policies through the month of April and May.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So
I'm sorry, how many did you say were coming for info? None for action on the 6th, right? But
that's
3
correct.
for info?
Correct. 3 Department of Teaching and Learning for information on May 6th. That's correct.
Okay. I'm just, 6th is when we adopt the budget or approve the budget or whatever the right verb is. Just wondering about, you know.
Yeah, that's the meeting that's going to be really, really long.
Is it?
Yeah. The agenda is going to be quite lengthy.
Okay. Matt, what do you anticipate the info items will be in terms of, you know, time?
These are all pretty straightforward. This is resources, which is a really pretty straightforward policy, and selection of textbooks is pretty straightforward. Support resources and extended time, need a little bit more conversation around those. So typically you spend what, 10 minutes on each one? Is that about normal? Depends how many questions the board has.
Yeah, if not less.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're routine, I would say even less than 10 minutes is typical.
Yeah. I don't see any of these 3 as being really a huge deal. These are not a controversy. This is not like the discipline policy or any of the rest of those where we expect a tremendous amount of comments, that sort of thing. So you can obviously push them back if you're concerned about that. From the time we do have more coming down the pike, so the volume is going to continue to go up. Just so you guys are aware. I think I don't think it would hurt us necessarily as a school system to not have them to push them back by 1 board meeting. I don't think that would kill us from that lens, but you would end up having 4 then on that board meeting on the 20th if you did that. So
May 20th.
May 20th.
Yes, May 20th. Yeah, exactly. May 20th. Yeah. Do you want me to recommend that, Reed? Christina, do you want me to recommend that they push him back?
I'm trying to remember. I was in a weekly meeting last week, and I'm trying to remember what was the volume in the meeting for the 20th. Like, what was the volume of the agenda for the meeting the 20th? Because I know that we went back and forth on this question about whether or not it made sense to push them back. And it might just be a good topic of conversation, Melanie, to bring to weekly meeting today and look at it in the context of that, because I just cannot remember
Yeah.
This week has been a little bit of a crazy week for me. My brother got married yesterday. We're all still kind of recovering.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Who's in weekly meeting today?
David's in there tonight.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all.
I'll be happy to bring it up as part of.
Both can. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the best way to go about it because I just cannot recall what's on the 20th. And if there is the capacity to shift it to the 20th without completely overloading the 20th either, then I think that might make sense. But if it's going to overload the 20th, then that doesn't make any sense for us to just punt a bad meeting, like make a bad meeting already worse. Like,
Okay.
Okay, so that's fine. So just let me know what you guys decide and we'll make the necessary adjustments at the meeting. So that's good. And we do a little bit later in the meeting have a conversation around another big bundle that's coming through, but we'll reserve that for the other topics. But
yeah,
there's a big bundle, big wave coming down the pike here.
in August, that August
big.
adoption.
Yeah, so we're gonna need to. We're gonna have to have a conversation around that. Okay, so we're gonna go to the, now we've got there are not currently any policies for revised policies right now, but enjoy this little bit of time off because the wave is coming. And
Bracing for impact. It's fine.
What?
We're bracing for impact.
You should. I mean, it's one of those things we're gonna have to seriously think about. It's a big group. So we're now on to existing policies. There are 4 HR policies and then one that was an omission where it had gone to the board previously way back in March, and we simply forgot to talk about it at the subcommittee meeting here. So
okay.
So that's all. That's all. It's just a one-pager policy that I just missed it on the agenda. So we have that one too. So we'll do the. Let's do that one first. So it's policy I-72530, prevention, intervention, and remediation. This was in the March 12th Friday letter and was left off the subcommittee agenda here for conversation.
The very last one in that bundle that we spent a lot of time talking about different things in this bundle.
Yes,
right?
we spent a lot of time talking about this one, and this is a one-page policy that was buried in the middle of it.
And we just missed it.
We just missed it.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you look at the bundle, the 30-page bundle, it's on page 15. And it's a one pager without a pip.
Okay.
Can I just take a minute to read through it? It's been a minute
Absolutely.
since I've looked at this one.
Absolutely.
And you said there's no PIP for this one.
That's correct.
Interesting. Where do we cover the processes associated with this policy in a different PIP? Is that why we don't have a PIP for it? Because there's a lot in here that's like, that probably falls under grading and reporting and communication of grading, which were the other policies in the same bundle. But this is a kind of narrow definition within it, and I'm surprised that there's not a PIP associated with addressing this particularly narrow definition.
As far as I know, unless we made a mechanical mistake, let me just double check to be sure we
Go
didn't
for it.
any sort of mechanical mistake here, because that does happen. There's no PIP. I-72530, right? 7.2.5. No, there's no PIP.
Interesting. So I have a couple of thoughts, but Reed, do you want to go first, or do you want me to dig in?
No, go ahead.
So, high level, the language of this needs to be updated. It was written in 2007, so it was written in a different moment of time in education context and conversation. So the language needs to be updated to match our ATSS language. It needs to reference all of the other procedures that we've put in place, lowercase p procedures that we put in place to intervene with students. It needs to be updated to include, there's a more strong emphasis on standardized tests, predictor tests, and like formal testing, but it needs to include example, like language that refers to formative assessments, like interim benchmarks assessments, things like that. So it's just like an updating of the language to reflect the education language that we use in our other policies. I'm having a macro debate in my own head that might want to be played out in the process of updating this as to whether or not this really should be the rest of this bundle was about grading and communication of grading. And does this section actually need to instead be the purpose, like you grade in purpose of doing this? Like, does this should this be its own standalone thing, or should in fact be something that's incorporated in that with our philosophy of grading? If the VSBA model policy includes it separately, like, happy to defer to it, so that's fine. If when they put together the model policy, it felt like there was some merit to keeping it separate, that makes sense. It's just that this feels like an afterthought, when in reality, what you're communicating with a grade, or what you're communicating specifically with a failing grade, is covered in this particular section.
Okay, I think I understand.
Yeah.
All right, so what you really got here is the content of this may belong in other policies. In other words, it's
Exactly.
using the leader language for various other interventions that we've got. So grab this paragraph, put it here, grab this paragraph, put it here.
That might be it. If we don't do that, I do think we should have some sort of a PIP that's associated with this, because it has been a point of contention, particularly of the advocates for students with disabilities and our Black and our Brown students, that this process has been unclear in the past and has not been standardized or consistent from school to school to school. And so if we're going to maintain this as its own separate policy, versus using this language as like leader language and other policies that do
I
have
gotta step
PIPs.
away for a second.
That's okay. So if this is going to be its own policy, it's going to need some sort of a PIP so that there's a clear established direction on how to implement. Or if we take this language and put it into leader language of policies that already exist that have their own PIPs, so that the process of actual implementation is clear.
Yep, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
All right. We started this about 15 minutes into the meeting, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, give or take.
I'm going to start putting in my notes the
The
point in the
timestamp.
timestamp in the meetings, right? Do I think it'll just be easier for?
I've been doing that in weekly meeting. I've been doing that in weekly meeting ever since I started.
You're like taking notes. This happened at so and so time.
It's like, Brian, do you have that? Yeah.
I should have benchmarked for me, Brian, on
There you
that.
All
All right. Do you want to wait for Reed for the continuing on? Or you want to go to the next one here? All right. Looks like maybe he's coming back. Here he's back.
I could see his shoulder there for a second.
Yeah.
Reed, I'm all set, so we're turning it over to you if you have anything
Sorry.
else that you wanna.
No, there was a knocking at the door, but when I got there, there was nobody there.
Mm,
So I don't know what's going on.
Garden gnomes.
Yeah, I think somebody was supposed to come over today for some maintenance or something, but
All right.
we're gonna have to go unmaintained yet another day. All right, where are we?
We just finished the I-7 to 5:30. Christina shared her thoughts. There weren't anything from the other board members in the emails that came in. So I reviewed those two emails. Thank you for forwarding them, Reed. They're also in the policy review team.
7 to 5:30. Yeah. Yeah. So that part that Christina said about, it was written in 14 years ago. And it made me wonder when I was reading it, could you require mandatory attendance in summer school or something, depending on, whatever
That's a good question.
measures that you felt the student didn't achieve?
The only thing I'm aware
not
of is
Pressing, that kind of thing. And is that something that we want to carry through to today?
the only time I've seen mandatory summer school, Read, as a teacher, is saying, well, you didn't pass the class, so you would need to attend summer school in order to be promoted to the next grade level, that sort of a thing, to make up for missed learning. So that's the only time I've ever seen mandatory summer school. It's sort of more conditional summer school. Conditional.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
To promote, that's a condition of promotion. That's the only time I've seen it.
Yeah. Now, and is that because we weren't going to have the student repeat that grade, and therefore we're requiring summer school?
It's more of a condition.
Suppose the student said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to take summer school.
It's usually a condition of promotion.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So like an eighth grader going on to high school saying, well, you didn't pass your classes. I know you want to go to high school next year, but you can only go to high school if you take XYZ classes in summer school. And if they don't take them, then they're retained to repeat the eighth grade or whatever it was.
And that's for promotion from one grade level to the next. I'm sorry.
Yes.
School level to the next.
I suppose you could have somebody repeat sixth grade or kindergarten or whatever it is too. It's usually a promotion.
So promotion from one grade to another, not necessarily middle to high or elementary to middle.
We tend to put. Go ahead.
I think it's any grade.
Any?
I agree.
Any grade, and also I think even for sometimes on occasion a senior in high school as well to get their diploma.
Correct.
Well, that's why we end up with January graduates.
Yeah.
Where we have if kids who didn't complete a requirement and just have to complete the one credit or the two classes or whatever, then they're doing that as summer school, or they're doing that they're doing it at community high school, and they're using that time to they're using that to make up the credit so that they can then just graduate in January, and they'll do a late graduation.
Okay. So I've asked for clarification around that in the notes.
I think the language in that second paragraph isn't necessarily wrong. It might just require a little bit of massaging to make it a little bit more clear.
Right.
Yeah, because that's the paragraph that I think is triggering this conversation.
Yeah.
Okay. And I guess it's the fourth paragraph. The line 25, the students who undergo literacy and RTI screening. Now we're changing our literacy screening. So I'm guessing that's not going to have an impact on what this policy says, but
I don't think so. I think it just changes the mechanism. Although now that you mentioned it, we do also have math screening in elementary school. So this should probably include literacy and mathematics screening. Or really maybe like who undergo screening, including but not limited to literacy, math, RTI.
So I think this section is what is required under the code. So my guess is that the code is saying literacy, but we're saying, well, we want more than that. Is that
That's right. That's right. Yeah, because our practice is that we now provide additional screening. We do provide the math screeners, and we provide the literacy screeners, and we provide RTI screeners. Like, so I don't know how you've done this in the past where you start with the code and build on it, because that's what we're trying to do here. We're starting with what's in code and we're not taking it verbatim. We're adding onto it on top of things.
okay? Okay. That makes sense. All right.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that, kind of the baseline assumptions, the way this represents the lay of the land from 2007 doesn't get carried forward to today in some obsolete manner,
Yeah. And although it said this was revised in January of this year, in practice that was amended. There's a typo, Melanie. It says revised in January. It was actually amended. Just so you know. Okay.
Got it.
I just caught that. It was amended in that section 24 there to due to some code language changes. We just did that. So it's now going through, interesting enough, going through a full policy revision, full revision now, not just an amendment. That's why it may be familiar to you. we just saw this. What? That's what's going on. Okay. So I've got that. Thank you. Anything else on this one? Okay. So now
no.
we're going to shift over to G1-30.goal, G1.30 goals. And just as a heads up, we've had a communication, Brian, I've had a talk about the goals policies, and a number of staff members are sort of interested in retiring these things or that sort of stuff. But really what they do is they set up the org chart. So we're thinking that what we want to do is align the goals policies with the new reorganization. And as that happens, redefine them. So there's goals for every quarter of that new organizational structure, and move a lot of the content around. So we're going to do this now. We're going to get the feedback now, but understand what we're probably going to do is create a whole new structure, move them instead of one from each of the where they are. We're going to move them all under one policy, maybe a bunch of PIPs or something like that, moving the content around so that it's more uniform for the entire school system and has a uniform purpose. A lot of great content in there. It sort of sets the vision, but the organization structure scattered all over the place makes it virtually impossible to find it. There isn't one for IS, that sort of stuff. So that's the big picture plan, just so you're all aware of that.
Are you thinking that would live under? Would that live under section C?
It would actually. It would live under section C. I had a conversation with the VSBA, Virginia School Board Association policy person this morning about the use of C and what it's to be used for. And she affirmed that C is the equivalent. So B is about the school board and the school board's organization and processes, and C is about the staff. So it's that same idea about how the superintendent organizes and puts things like that. That's what C is for, is the equivalent of B. And then everything else is about specific stuff like HR, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the superintendent's organization. So for example, the policy or PIPs around advisory committees would belong in C. If they're
Would
superintendent's
belong in
advisory
C.
committees, B, board advisory committees, C, superintendent's advisory committees. Right.
Mhm.
So that's that basic structure. So I had a good conversation today with VSBA about that.
That makes a lot of sense, and we're currently not using C to the best of our abilities. We only have 3
Absolutely.
policies in there, so it would make sense to have kind of a like convert C1 into like some sort of district-wide goals and structures or something. Whatever name to be determined, but that makes sense to me.
Exactly, and then individual maybe PIPs for each of the departments. So it's sort of I'll use the term chartering departments. IS exists for this, HR exists for this, yada yada yada, that sort of a thing. So
I don't know if those would be PIPs though, because we would. I feel like
Or
the board
policies.
would establish. Yeah, I feel like they might be sub policies.
Mhm.
And
They
then
could be.
you'd have the PIP that goes into more detail on the implementation of it. Because either way, the school board still kind of establishes the high level goals, like the macro level, high level goals of like the Department of Information Services does these things.
Mhm.
Like
Right.
the Department of Teaching and Learning does these things. The Department of Equity, Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion
Right.
does these things. Yeah. Anyways,
All right.
great
It's-
conversation. I like this idea. We'll
Okay.
continue talking
Good.
about it.
Good.
That's
Great.
like,
Yeah, it makes sense. So we
Yeah.
can figure out the
Totally.
organizational structure and where they sit, policies versus PIPs, etc. So anyway, just as a heads up on that one. All right. So within that context, we did receive some email feedback from 2 board members. I have that, and I'll pass that on. So anything else in addition to those?
Matt, did you get those?
Yes.
As part of the policy review team?
Yeah, Reed, what they do is if they send it to the policy review team email address,
Yeah,
then I give a copy of those.
yeah, I realized that too late.
That's okay. You're welcome to forward them.
They both did, right?
Yeah.
Send those
Yeah.
to the PRT.
They did, and that's what we request in the memo to them, is that they send it there.
Yeah.
And that's great for like a continuity perspective, because then PRT members can have access to that. They can see the feedback directly, that sort of stuff. So it's a sort of a utility mailbox for that purpose. They don't all necessarily have logins, but it goes over time, not Matt's email box or Brian's email box. It's not. This is the PRT mailbox, and so it's good for continuity of practice over time.
And heaven forbid you were to leave us, we would still have all of the materials without having to search through your inbox.
heaven forbids.
Heaven forbid.
Heaven forbid.
Amen.
I only have one thing on this particular policy.
Okay.
Probably can use the same kind of refresh to language just to make sure that we're comfortable with it. I was fascinated that there wasn't a retention goal here. Like the school board seeks to achieve a high level of employee performance and satisfaction, but there was no like we seek to maintain our employees.
Yeah, isn't that
Like we want to keep our highly qualified and competent people, and we want to keep them incentivized to stay.
number 4?
Retain.
4?
Oh, it does say retain. Sorry, missed that.
Yeah, I actually thought you could like put the retain word in. What is it? Is it number 2?
Maybe, yeah,
And kind of cut out one of those numbered paragraphs.
maybe. But the nuance of 4
Whatever.
is helpful because it has the highly qualified and competent. Because I don't want to retain people who are terrible. I want to retain the good people.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it's attrition that is going to be in service of improving services for students, then that's attrition that we can live with.
Right. So you don't want
So
your
we're
highly
losing
qualified.
the-
Yeah.
I don't want the highly qualified people going to somewhere else because they can pay them more. Like that's what I don't want. I want to keep the highly qualified people.
Or because they're not satisfied with their work
Yep.
environments or all the rest of those reasons that highly qualified people
They're not
leave.
engaged.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we seek to hire highly qualified people too.
Yep,
We do.
we do.
Right. So is that in here? There's no recruitment in here, actually.
It says to employ highly qualified, well-trained, and committed teachers, administrators, and support personnel.
Yeah. It doesn't talk about recruitment, which is an interesting concept.
Maybe that could be to recruit and employ.
Could be.
That first bullet point.
I'm just going to add a little note to include recruitment.
Sure. something.
of highly qualified people.
Mhm.
Yeah, because that's part of that would make sense because HR talks about that. The recruit, hire, grow, retain as it's part of their mantra. And so the recruitment's not here. So they'll clean that language up. Okay. Anything else on this one?
Speaking of the grow, is there a grow in here? And 5 kind of sort of gets to it, but it doesn't really grow. It's like loosey goosey.
Just because it says development, it doesn't really address.
Yeah. And another one is so speak to. We have a conversation about growing our leadership, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the internal leadership growth process, where you're not only maintaining somebody in their existing position, but preparing them for the next level up, and doing that systematically, so that we've got what I'll consider, I call it internal supply chain, that internal pipeline.
Yep.
The farm
So-
system, as I called it at one point in time, which they never liked. But I liked the concept of the internal farm system, where it's like a sports, you're working your way up to the minor leagues and the majors and all that sort of stuff. So,
Yeah.
okay. All right. That's good. Anything else on this one?
That last paragraph, there have been activities by employees that have caused them to be terminated. Yeah, I guess mostly because what they were doing in their private lives was breaking the law. Something like that. But I don't know if we actually need to say that, but kind of the way it's written, it sort of says, whatever you do off of working hours is, not our concern. Yeah, it is and it isn't.
Okay.
Maybe we need to, insert the word lawful.
Yeah.
Lawful, private, religious, political activity,
right.
Something like that. I don't
Yeah,
know.
the note I took should be near this, so it doesn't imply that people can break the law.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's really getting to your point, and they'll word it the way that makes sense to them. That's the idea. Yeah. Okay.
We also might want to. There's language that's in the grievance policy. That's about like we could add at the end of the sentence. That does not bring. Like, even if they're doing something lawful in their private life, but if it is bringing disrepute upon the district in any way, shape, or form, that is not something we want to be tolerating. And I can't remember what exactly the language is in the grievance policy, but it's something of that lines of it's something that brings like ill repute or something to the district. Yeah, does the disservice to the district, something like that. But if you're doing something legally and it doesn't make us look bad, I don't care what you're doing. Yeah.
Okay. All righty.
Cool.
All right. Thank you for that one. Moving on to the next one. 131. Human Resources Policy and Implementation Procedures.
This is just the PIP, right?
Explain the PIP process.
I'm not sure this is even necessary. My 2 cents is that this is already governed under other places. The only thing that this one has specifically is the as I saw it, and typically I don't chime in too much, but the specificity that if it's going to affect employee groups, that we will involve those groups with the revision process. I would say that that's the one piece in here that I would consider meat in that area around, say, line 9 through 11 or something like that.
But couldn't that just be? I need to go back and look at the policy that governs that establishes the PIP dynamic, because it might just be an amendment to that.
So move that content up to
Like that one sentence, yeah.
Yeah, this, really kind of intermingles all PIPs, procedures for all PIPs,
Mhm.
with this particular one about human resources where it talks about the employee groups.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So it's going to be,
This was.
it's under B. It's under B.
B6.
B6. Yeah. Yeah. School board. Okay. Makes sense. That would make more sense because that
It would make a lot more sense.
Yeah.
So a policy implementation procedure includes the specific responsibilities, procedures, timelines, and schedule for implementation of a given policy. PIPs are subject to change as conditions and/or circumstances may dictate. The superintendent approves all revised or new PIPs. You could very easily add a sentence in there that, like, when PIPs, like this sentence of when PIPs involve implications on employees, that their employee groups will be consulted in the process of implementation. And that would be a very simple, clear amendment to just put forward.
Yeah, interestingly enough, we don't have, our policy process doesn't have the agility to do that.
Yeah.
So, and that's one of those interesting things we have, Christina, that we should think closely about, because I'm getting a bit of an aside here, but we end up with these things called remnants, where we want to strike a policy, we want to rework, and we end with this important sentence, and we know it needs to go to this other place, but it takes 6 months to move it to the other place, right? So there's no agile process for that. But we do have an agile process for an amendment, right? We could amend a policy, which only right now is code changes, but you could argue that amendments could also be moving exact language quoted from one policy to another policy. Just for without rewording anything.
For reorganization purposes.
Yeah, for reorganization purposes only. Literally just moving the language over. So that's something to think about. That may be a good thing to do.
Matt, is that something you guys can do, or is the definition of the procedures here, set in stone because the board voted on it or adopted it or something like that?
So the board tells us, has told us, we have a collective agreement, and I believe it's in one of our policies, the board policies, about this concept of policy revisions and amendments, right? And that limits the scope of an amendment to code changes. So you would need to update that one policy to say.
No,
you don't think so?
Hold on. A school board policy is adopted as amended for the following reasons. 1, updates due to recent changes to the Code of Virginia. 2, changes made that require realignment with division procedures. Or 3, to address an identified immediate need. Amending a policy does not reset the 5-year review cycle. It could be, like, something like that could be interpreted as number 2.
Yeah, read number 2 again.
Changes that require realignment with division procedures.
The vision procedures? Is that
Division.
capital V?
Division.
Oh, division.
Division.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I might not have been enunciating. My bad.
Yeah, I would say it would definitely fall under that.
Okay.
Concerns? What are we not thinking about by jumping on that language?
So how would you, so this has been adopted, this policy at some point was approved, I guess, by the board, right? Through a vote.
B6, it was approved on May 30th, 2019, to be specific.
Also,
Okay.
moving back to the macro point of the goals policy, I kept reading the policy development process, and it does say very clearly that draft policies shared with the superintendent, appropriate staff, and internal and external stakeholders for feedback. That will cover that's broad sentence will cover whatever was in this goals piece
Right.
anyways. So I think we're talking about a moot point anyways. Like
Okay.
I think we could just retire this entire policy 131 because it is covered in other places.
Okay.
I don't know. That's possible. Yeah, take a look at that, Matt. Going back to the other discussion, if you do that, if you say, oh, this little adjustment falls under, draft 2 there, and the PRT is just going to make this adjustment. How do you inform the board of it? This is for a policy, right?
Right. So whenever a policy goes for amendment read, it follows all the standard processes. The only thing it doesn't do is go out for public comment. Right. So that would go through the PRT, it would go through the subcommittee, it would go for info and action. So it goes through all the normal processes. The only thing we don't do is put amendments out for public comment. Other than that, it's exactly the same. And so that makes it a much faster process.
Yeah.
Yeah, just it really reduces the cycle time. You can do it in about 6 weeks rather than 6 months because there's no public comment process.
Okay. So I guess then it's up to you guys, you and the PRT, to decide whether you want to do that for this particular.
If the board is comfortable that under 2 changes that require realignment within the division procedures, and you're interpreting that as dealing with remnants, in other words, moving existing language from one policy to another, just moving it. That's all you're doing is just reorganizing the content and not changing the content. If you're interpreting it that way, that addresses, we can bring that to the PRT, and I can say, hey, they would like to, boards interpreting it this way. I think that would solve a lot of problems for us. Do we sort of on board with this concept? And if they say, sounds good, then we can just do that. And that's a board interpreting its own policy. You're welcome to interpret your own policy in the way that you want to. And it gives the PRT a tool, right? Just another tool in our toolkit for dealing with this stuff. Because we've had situations where remnants got left for like 2 years and
and they were waiting until you finally got to it.
They got forgotten. They just got forgotten because there was no agile way to move it. And we knew where it had to go. We just couldn't. That's what just got dropped.
Agreed. I think this is probably worth like the 2 of us having a conversation with the rest of our colleagues just to explain the scenario, talk them through what the process would be like, and see if they're amenable to interpreting it this way, and then coming back with the consensus of the board once we've spoken to our colleagues. I don't think that anyone's going to have a problem with this, but I think that it's something that we should just have the conversation with them about.
Yeah, probably.
Right.
And then whenever, Matt, you and or the PRT decide to do this for whatever policy, it's still going to come back to the board for
Absolutely.
approval. Yeah.
I mean, the board will still see each one of these things. It's this is a process change, right? All we're doing is we're saying that if we have these remnants where you've got existing language that, because of a revision of a policy, no longer belongs in that policy. It doesn't make any sense, right? Because you've reorganized or that sort of stuff. But where its destination is supposed to be, you're not in the middle of revising right now, right? So it's just sitting there hanging out. And you need to put it somewhere that we'll consider that you can place it in that other location. And we're just going to call that to the amendment process rather than the full revision process. And that the board still has to approve the amendments and all that. It goes to the PRT, it goes to the subcommittee, the board has to approve it, all of that. It just doesn't go out for public comment. It also does not reset the revision cycle, right? So it doesn't reset the 5-year revision cycle at all.
But it could still come, like the track changes could still come to us in the bundle of we're going to revise these policies, and in order to revise these policies, we're doing these amendments with moved language. That's cut and paste. And then here's your full bundle. So you're seeing the entire bundle. And then even in
Yeah.
the presentation, you can say, like,
Mhm.
these are the changes we made to the actual policy. This is the language that needed to be moved, and it's being moved to these destinations, which is going to be an amendment to those
Yes.
destinations. And then we vote on all the things.
That's right.
Yeah.
That would work.
So
Yes.
everyone will still be informed, but that just gives us the ability to do this in a more iterative way. I like this idea.
Yeah, I think that's very clean, Christina.
Yeah.
I like it
So
too.
Reed, let's take that as an action step and let's talk about that with everybody and then see where they feel. And we can come
Okay.
back to Brian and Matt in 2 weeks with a yay or an nay.
Okay, you want to do a
Yeah, I
voicemail on the subject?
I can do a
Or-
voice.
Or would you rather write something up?
I'll just do a voicemail because then people can call me back if they have questions about it.
Okay.
Okay. So a question I would have then, this is think about it a little bit. Does it have to be exactly the same language, or can it be the same idea? In other words, if we're going through this revision process and we're revising that language anyway, right? So I'm going through this full review process of policy A, and through that revision process, I end with this remnant, this content, which is not going to belong in policy A, and I want to put it in policy B, but I want to revise policy B right now. When I move that remnant over from policy A to policy B, does it have to literally be the exact language that's currently in policy A? Or could I revise that language as part of placing it in policy B through the amendment of policy B?
So change happy to glad.
Happy,
Yeah.
sure, or whatever else. Exactly. Change happy to glad,
All dogs to puppies.
or
Yeah.
make some minor tweaks or adjustments to it.
Yeah.
With that.
The way that I'm reading our policy, the paragraph on our policy and amended policies, does not preclude changing the language in the process of the move. Because that changes made that require realignment with division procedures. Like that is a pretty broad that's a pretty broad clause. So I'll in the voicemail, I will pose that question and then we'll figure out where people are. If we as the board are seeing the entire thing as a packet that will make sense and remind people of this is why we're doing this is where it's going to go, I don't foresee a particular problem. I think there might be some pushback on wanting to make sure that any revised language does go for public comment in some way, shape, or form, whether it goes as like a very narrow piece of like we're going to amend this language and then move it to this policy to provide us feedback on just this language, not the entirety of policy B, or policy whatever the other policy was. Does that make sense?
We would actually do that as part of policy A. So in other words, we're reviewing policy A, and so we're making holistic changes with public comment in policy A anyway. Right.
That's right.
So you can revise. Yeah. So you're actually revising this language and plan to move it to this other policy as an amendment, right? And it just needs to be really clear that so here's the new language, and here's
we'll get there by that. Yeah.
And here's where it's gonna, and just physically just gonna move over here instead.
It's just like a comment that like it will move to this policy once once we revise it.
Yep. And comments are.
I think that is really transparent for the community.
Yep.
It allows us the agility to be able to make the changes that we need to make. Even if we try it for a year or two and we see if that actually helps our policies and PIPs be more clean. If we hate it, then we can go back and modify policy B6 to explicitly prohibit it going forward. But
that's right.
We can try it out and see how it goes.
PDSA, I love it. Plan, do, study, act. Give it a shot. Execute it. See if it works. If it works, keep doing it. Doesn't work, stop doing it.
Cool.
That's pretty straightforward. Okay. All right.
You're encroaching on the top of the hour. Does anybody have a hard stop?
I do.
Yeah, I do. I'm triple tasking here. Sorry.
Okay.
How many more do we have to go?
We
Quite a bit.
Two more, and then a whole bunch of other topics, which I think we can reschedule. All the rest of the stuff, I think we can.
We're gonna have to push them to the next meeting.
We can push those back to our next meeting.
Can we, or do we need an intervening meeting?
No, I think we need the feedback on these. Well, this is feedback on existing policies. I can ask Brianna, because they're all HR policies, if she has a sense of urgency or if she can wait 2 more weeks for
Okay.
the feedback on the existing policies. I can just ask her that if we want to do a hard stop here. And if she
I'm
says,
also happy to review because there's a lot of like detail here. So I'm happy to review with a fine-tooth comb offline and then send feedback via email. So we don't have to have an extra meeting if we don't want to do that.
that was very well received the last time you did that, Christina.
Great, I can do that.
They were very pleased with that. I will tell you.
When I go through with them with a fine-tooth comb and I'm like, here are all of the changes.
Yeah, the one with strategic plan, they were just like, that's just great. I would just
Great.
tell you that was very, very complimentary of that work.
Good. I'm glad it's helpful.
Well, and it helps because then I'm not sitting here interpreting your words and writing them down and taking notes, and there's just, we're playing a game of telephone here, right? It's not going to be perfect. Okay, so is that the plan then? That will provide. I think we got through I-72530. We got through that one. We got through G130, which is goals. I think we got through G131, which is human resources policies and procedures. So that leaves G2.4 human relations and G 3.2.3.30 employee health and dental insurance. So we would do those 2 in writing.
We'll do those 2 in writing. That's fine.
Those 2 in writing.
Okay.
Nope.
Yeah.
Does that work?
So,
And then I'll take the.
Yeah.
I make no promises to have such detailed feedback on health and dental insurance. Not my particular specialty, but okay.
No, it's only feedback as you need to, right? It's only the point here.
I'll read through it and I'll be like, is there something missing here? I don't really know what I'm looking at, but sure.
Yeah. Okay. And then we have a bunch of other topics that we can table for the next meeting. Brian, the whole staffing over under thing. Christina, the BPIPs that we had talked about.
Yeah, we have to come to that.
A conversation about the VSBA model policies that we wanted to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had one is that we have this giant wave. The PRT reviewed 14 policies at our last meeting. We've got 14 policies all coming together.
Oh, crap.
That's a big chunk. And we can get through everything except that is too much for a board meeting for an info. So they're coming in August. We need a plan for that. And that's my recommendation of a work session. That's my recommendation.
That? Yeah, I think we're going to need to have a work session for that probably.
Yeah.
Where we're going to see all of them. Yeah.
In August.
Yeah.
So that would be my recommendation, is that the board have a policy workstation session in relatively early August. This is the whole discipline stuff. There's a whole discipline. Yeah, huge discipline bundle section, and then a whole bunch of instruction policies. So this is and the strategic plan one too. Is actually just sort of got caught up in all that. So I think you're gonna need a work session. That would be my recommendation. Early August would be my recommendation. That's what staff is shooting for. They want them adopted before the school year starts. So we could do the work session, or the work session as the information meeting, and then adopt it through consent at a regular board meeting, whenever that is. So that would be my recommended process there.
Reed, do you want to talk with Barbara about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a big bundle, but the staff would like these adopted before the school year starts.
I totally agree. These are some really big ones that just need to be done before the school year starts.
And I would expect this to be something that's fairly normal, right? I would expect there always to be a bundle ready for the upcoming school year. That's pretty normal. So the concept of a policy work session in August where we do that, approve the schedule, all the rest of that sort of stuff.
That resonates, especially as we're going into the next school year, and that seems like something that we could do, and it'll help us stay on track so we don't fall out of cycle with our reviews. If we know that we're going to have at least that one work session in August, that we can kind of not front load, but like have that as have that be a heavy work session. I don't think the grading policies that were in the bundle that we just talked about are also coming in August. And do those also need to be done before the school year?
No, the grading policies, the ones we just talked about, let me bring up the schedule here.
The only reason I'm remembering them is because we just went back to that same bundle, and so they're top of mind now.
Yeah, so the ones we looked at today, what was there? States here. Look at my schedule. So extended
Like
learning opportunities
October?
is December. Summer learning opportunities, prevention, intervention, and remediation is December. Health insurance is December. Goals is December. So we're looking at, yeah, grading is December. Homework is December. Yeah. So we're looking at December.
Got it. So those are going to be in place for the following school year in reality.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And they may be, right. So we get adopted. Those could be effective immediately, or they could be effective in the upcoming school year, depending on the way that it works. Things.
I think that's going to be dependent, and then we can table the rest of this for the future conversation. But I think it's going to depend on how much the language changes based on the feedback that we provided and based on public feedback, because we had a couple of conversations during those about wanting to streamline and standardize the way that operates and the way that homework operates specifically and grading operates specifically and make that more consistent. And if we are going to be introducing a change mid-year, we're going to need to be super clear that this is going to be coming down the pike, so that when someone is writing their syllabus over the summer, that they're anticipating maybe some sort of a structural change that's going to come around December. And like anything we can do to preview that, the better. Or just decide that this is not going to be, like, put some clear language in there that this is effective, like effective at the first day of the school year of the following term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll make that crystal clear on those things.
Yeah.
So, yeah. You can't change it. You can't change the grading practices in the middle of the year.
Not in the middle of the year.
You just can't do it. No.
Like are we trying to have a mass mutiny? Because we're not trying to do that. No. Okay.
You can't do that. All right.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, Melanie, are you still listening?
Yep, I'm here.
So this is probably something you want to put in your tickler file for, some meeting time over the summer about this big, what did you say, Matt, 14 policies? This big bundle that are coming?
Yeah, the bundle, I believe the bundle is 14. That's 14 policy bundle. I think it's 14. Yeah. I have to look at the specific agenda, but it's about 14.
Yeah, and that, we'll likely need a work session, or staff's recommending a work session on this. I will bring it up with Barbara and talk to her about it. But when you do your, calendar work session planning.
It's already on my list. I was aware it was coming.
Great.
Let me see. I think it's 12. I'm sorry.
12. Okay.
It's still a lot.
But that's the current. That's the wave going through. There are other things that might catch up to that. There are things that might get delayed that might be part of that. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, it's 10. It's 10. I'm sorry. It's 10. I was counting PIPs separately, but some big ones. Student code of conduct. There was a discipline policy, structural delivery options, addition of sports teams. I mean, this is big stuff. The strategic plan.
This is a lot.
Search and seizure. I mean, these are some. There's some meaty topics.
These are going to be some substantive topics. So I think we're going to need a work session. We might actually need a work session and an abbreviated info and action. Let's talk about this. Yeah, Reed, let's definitely talk about this with Barbara, because the reason that I think we might need an abbreviated info is because we're going to want it to show up on a board meeting agenda, so that if people have public comment about it, that they have a venue to provide that comment, before the action meeting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but that's part of the policy review process anyway, is that it goes out for public comment.
They went to yes, it went to public comment, but you know how people still want to comment on the final. And normally they have the info meeting, and if they want to comment on at the info meeting, they can read it ahead of time and provide public comment at that meeting. And then there's still another 2 weeks or so until it comes for action. If we're doing the work session is the info, and then the following meeting is coming up under consent or even coming up under action, then they haven't had that intervening board meeting to provide public comment at the board meeting.
Hey, Melanie, can we create a public comment opportunity at a work session?
It's a great question.
Sure.
Generally, we say no public comment is accepted at work sessions, but it's up to the board if they want to make a special exception. I guess they can, but.
Or could we do a public hearing? Like, do we have the ability to establish a public hearing where we can get comment on, I'm assuming that we have the ability to do that on anything. We do that on budget, we do that on CIP, whatever. But could we say that we're going to do a public hearing on policies and do like a work session followed by a public hearing, just like we did with the board work sessions, where it's like, it was work session. No, I'm sorry, that was closed meeting and then public hearing, never mind. But we could do them kind of like back to back, where you did like an hour and a half of work session and public comment, or vice versa, something like that. I don't know.
We're required to do public hearings for boundary changes and budget by state law.
Mm-hmm.
I'll talk to Barbara about it. I would be afraid that if we just invent a public hearing opportunity, people are going to want us to invent another public hearing opportunity for, a different.
For like topics. Literally anything.
Fair. For anything.
Fair.
Yeah.
We also don't need to make all of these decisions today.
That's right.
Yeah.
But the problem we're trying to solve is, how do you get public comment on the essentially the versions that the board is considering?
Correct.
What's the mechanism for that, which normally occurs through the information meeting? So how do we provide that same opportunity within our current structures, or minor tweaks to our structures, without opening a whole new can of worms to read?
Without opening a Pandora's box of people wanting to have public comment at every work session. Let's think about this, and let's think of what the right mechanism is going to be. I actually do think that having public hearings on our policies going forward is that, like our budget, our CIP, boundaries, policies, they all fall in this governance, big, important buckets of work that the school board engages in.
Yeah.
So if we did have a public hearing structure for policies, that's something that I think would be appropriate going forward. Yes, it's more work for us, but I think it's appropriate in the way that we're interfacing with the community. But let's think about that, and let's think about all the implications of it, and make sure that we're making a well-informed decision.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I will bring this up with Barbara and Christina. You and I can talk about.
Yeah.
Actually, you and I should probably talk about this first, and then I'll talk to Barbara and give her our consensus, recommendation on how to do this.
I'm driving back home from Connecticut tomorrow, so I'll be in the car for 5 hours. So let me know if you want to chat while I'm in the car. Okay. And I'm going to be on 95 the entire time, so I'll have self signal.
What's the window?
Between like 11 and 4.
11 to 4. Okay.
We're going to try to get out of here by 11, but don't know if that's actually going to happen. And then we need to get back home. I think our work session tomorrow is at 6. So we're going to try and get home well before then, so we can unpack the car and get the dog in and all the stuff.
And you're going to be at the SAB tonight, right?
I'm not going to be at the SAB. I'm going to be at the next SAB meeting. This is the one that I switched to the next meeting. And so I think it's just you and one other person at today's meeting, and then I'm at the next.
Barbara?
Yeah, I think it's you and Barbara this time, and then I'm going to be at the next one.
And then there'll be 4 of us at the next one?
I believe so. I believe that's how the timing worked out.
Yes.
Yes,
Because of
okay.
open office hours and weekly meeting, we just couldn't adjust to have anyone else
Okay. So
tonight.
that's what, May 17th, I think? Is
Yes.
that
Mhm.
I think
SAB?
so.
So there'll be
Yep.
4 board members there.
Yeah. And thank
Okay.
you, Melanie, for helping with the scheduling. Today's the last night that I get to be with my brother and his fiance before they go off on their honeymoon. So we're gonna try and grab some dinner and get a little bit of family time in. So that'll be good.
That's wife, not fiance.
Oh, you're right. She's now the wife as of yesterday at 2 p.m.
Your
That's right.
sister-in-law.
True.
Yes.
Good catch.
Okay, all right, good, thanks. I gotta run. Thanks, everybody. I guess I closed the meeting by saying this meeting is adjourned.
That's great.
Success.
All right,
Bye, everybody.
take care.
Thanks.